first half, I had 2 costly turnovers. Me not holding the safety, me just knowing the coverage, me knowing it was man, threw a BS interception. It was 7-7 at the time. I believe they scored after that. Battle back, fumble, snap, trying to make something happen. Couldn't throw. It was like a RPO play, so I couldn't really throw the ball to likely, the offensive line was down the field. So I was trying to make something happen. Tried to squeeze the ball, slipped out my hand. Von Miller picked it up, got some yards. I think that led to points for them. So it's a team effort out there. He been busting his behind, he making plays happen out there on that field for us. Came up short. And like I've been saying all season, every time we in situations like this, turnovers play a factor. Penalties play a factor. Tonight, the turnovers, we can't have that, and that's why we lost the game. Because as you can see, we're moving the ball wonderfully. It's hold on to the ball. I'm sorry for my name.
That's Lamar Jackson speaking candidly after the 27-25 loss to Buffalo in Buffalo, which was a scene of, I don't even know what to call it. The fans, like I said, if you've ever been to a Bills game, it's just one of those games. Like, it's just the atmosphere, the aura. It's crazy, and the respect that the fans give you in Buffalo as the opposing team is just, you can't describe it. But that's where I'm going to start. 4 games have concluded in the divisional round. We got 4 teams left. But before I get to those games, which I'm going to talk about after, I'm going to start with, of course, Buffalo and Baltimore. Now, usually this would be like the main event of the podcast, but I'm going to start with it for various reasons. Number one, I'm going to give a shout out to Lamar Jackson. The responsibility and the accountability he took for that loss is what it is. He keeps getting into these situations. I know a lot of Ravens fans are going to point the fingers at Mark Andrews for that fumble and all that stuff, but you got to look at the genesis of how they got there. You got to look at the plays before. You can't be talking about the refs. You got to look at the plays before. Lamar had 2 costly fumbles. He had the interception that was erratic. Andrews also had a fumble earlier in the game. So you want to blame those 2 for losing the game? Great. But let me tell you this. If it wasn't for those 2, you wouldn't be in that position last night. If it wasn't for those 2 players and Derrick Henry, Baltimore is not playing in that divisional game yesterday. So you can say all the things you want to say. You want to make all the comments, scream out of your ass, do whatever you want. But it's unfortunate. And the questions are, what does Baltimore need to do in the future for this not to happen? Derrick Henry had, 16 carries, 84 yards, and had a rushing touchdown. So it wasn't like his presence wasn't there. Baltimore did a few things to make sure he got the ball, but also Buffalo did a little bit too on defense. But the turnovers were very costly in the game, and it was the deciding factor. Lamar had 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles, 1 interception. And, of course, Mark Andrews had his. So, technically, there were 4 turnovers in that game. And this is why the score is 27-25. Because if you watch that first drive by Baltimore, it was masterful. Masterful, Lamar. Even that last drive that they had before they got to the 2-point conversion situation, that was masterful. That throw was like, what? Again, so this game was amazing in terms of just the whole storyline from beginning to end. Josh Allen didn't throw any touchdowns. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and ran for 20 yards. Davis had his 1. The offense, when it came to receiving, Shakir was the leading receiver with 67 yards, and the rest of the guys were pedestrian. 15 yards by Cook, 12 by Mac Hollins, 11 by Kincaid. It was just, a typical Buffalo game, just either killing it on the ground or spreading the wealth in the air. And, if you look at Baltimore, Bateman, of course, got his. Isaiah Likely got his. But, at the end of the day, for this particular game, and my takeaway is, this is what we expected. The deciding factor clearly was turnovers. It could have went either way. 2 phenomenal football teams It sucked that they had to play each other in a divisional game and not in the AFC Championship game. But the team that they're going to be playing in the AFC Championship game, referring to Buffalo, is somebody that they need to get through. If they want to, and I said this before, this is the team I picked to win their game, and I wanted them to win because if anybody wants to get to the Super Bowl, they need to get through the champs. I don't believe in, oh yeah, let me hope somebody else beats them. Nah, you do your job. You want to get that monkey off your back, you want to move on to the next level, you got to beat the team that's kept you away from that. So, at the end of the day, that's what it is, and it's unfortunate, but again, shout out to Lamar for taking full accountability for that because I'll tell you, man, those plays were rough. They were some rough plays, but the defense did their job too. So, like I said, Sean McDermott had to come up with a game plan along with a defensive coordinator, which they did, and they did enough to win this game. Could have went either way, but that's what it is for that. But the next game, of course, I think most of you already know, KC pulled it off 23-14 and well-deserved. Mahomes had one touchdown. He was falling off his back, the one that he passed to Kelsey. Kareem Hunt had that one rushing touchdown. Kelsey, shockingly, for the first time in like how many months, maybe a full season, actually had over 100 yards. 117 for one touchdown. They only had 7 receptions to get it. So, Mixon was doing his thing. I felt that they should have ran the ball more. Of course, the 2 missed field goals by Ferrum. I won't get into that. I saw that. C.J. Stroud was all right. He had 245, didn't throw for a touchdown, but he was sacked like 8 times. If I'm correct, he was sacked like 8 times, which offensive line, they got to be better, but that's the name of the game. So, but I'm going to get into something even more deeper about this game because KC won this game, which I picked them to win. They were the better team in terms of overall. Of course, the 2 bad calls by the refs to protect Patrick Mahomes. We'll get into that afterwards because I think this is a major problem. You piss off a lot of people when these things happen. You really do. And it's getting to a point where now everybody's saying the exact same thing. Yes, you protect the quarterback, but you don't help them either. You know what I mean? You don't help them. The helping needs to stop. This is where Buffalo's going to have to do what they're supposed to do. Otherwise, KC is going to be playing. But I'm going to talk about that later on as I do my preview of the AFC and NFC Championship games. But my biggest takeaway from that game, and most of you are not going to think about it. Some of you are. I'm going to. Chris Boyd. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this again, and I've had this conversation with multiple people about this. You do not put your hands on your coaches. You do not. Coach Frank Ross, whatever the exchange was, I don't care what the exchange was. You do not put your hands on a coach. First of all, you got a penalty for taking your helmet off on the field. That is fully on you. You do not walk over and put your hands on coaches. Anybody that's been a coach or a head coach knows you protect your coaching staff. If you allow your players to push your coaches, so who are you? And the worst part about it is DeMeco Ryans was standing right there. He was standing right there. I don't care if the game is going on. I don't care if there's a play. You could miss a play to deal with that. You handle that side. That sideline is yours. You are the head coach. You were standing right there when it happened. And absolutely nothing was done. You were standing right there. And I mean, some people are like, well, you're a little too much. No, I'm not. You don't do that. You do not put your hands on a coach. You got penalized and then you shoved your coach. This is the problem with sports right now with a lot of these younger players and coaches. DeMeco Ryans, you're standing right there. You did absolutely nothing about it. And then you're going to ask yourself why you lost. You could blame the refs for those 2 penalties that were very questionable with Patrick Mahomes. They were questionable. They shouldn't have been called. But I question you as a coach allowing your players to bully your coaching staff. Why should somebody like that and a team like that with no discipline be representing the AFC in the championship game? I don't want you guys in the AFC championship game. If there's one person that's glad that Houston lost, that's me. I'm absolutely. From when he pushed them, I said, no, get them out. I don't want them there. That's not a representation of a team to be representing anything in any type of sports. Take care of your players, discipline your players. He should have been in the back, changing his clothes, waiting for the bus outside of the arena after that push. That shit won't happen with most of the established coaches in sports. That would never happen. Can you imagine if Tony Parker's walking to the sideline and pushes one of the assistants for the Spurs? With Pop standing right there? Can you imagine if one of the New England players walked to the sideline and pushes Josh McDaniels while Belichick is standing right there? Can you imagine back in the days when the late, great Danny Green is coaching and Jake Reed comes and pushes Tony Dungy on the sidelines? Come on, guys. So all this, I know there was a lot of you that were hoping that Houston was going to win. I never picked Houston to win. But this, no. D'Amico Ryans, just my personal opinion, not advice. You better get your locker room in check. Because if you don't, you'll be out as a coach. And this is not a good look. This is no coach, and I say this to any coach in sports, no coach should allow any of this to happen to their team. This would never happen to any of my coaching staff. That player would be gone in a heartbeat. No excuses for that. So Kansas City winning that game, they deserve to win based on the fact that they won and they played to win the game, but also nobody wants representation like that in the in the AFC Championship game. Houston, figure it out in the offseason. Next order of business, I'm going to go to the Rams and the Eagles. And I don't know, man. I think Saquon Barkley is the savior. He's the Judas savior for this team because if it ain't for Saquon Barkley, I'll tell you right now, the Rams actually pulled this game off. I know Saquon's on his revenge tour, and it's lovely to see Saquon doing what he's doing because what he's doing right now is just absolutely just incredible. You know, he's giving the running back aura that hope again because there was a point where everybody kind of stopped believing in running backs, and you know how the pay grade's been, and running backs have been shuffled here, shuffled there. But Saquon Barkley came out yesterday and absolutely put on a stellar performance. And 26 carries for 205, 2 touchdowns. And that 78-yard touchdown he ran for in the snow, wow. That's the revenge right there. And shout out to Stafford, who threw 44 times, 324, 2 touchdowns, was sacked 5 times. But Stafford looked good. Jalen Hurts on the other side didn't look good at all. I don't know what's going on with him, but he has not played well at all. And I'm telling you, it's hard for me to continue to talk about a Philadelphia team who they're not on the same page. You could still see on the bench. And I keep telling people, the optics tell you a lot. You see these guys on the sideline. There's not a lot of team chemistry on the bench with these guys. They come to work, they bring their lunch, and they go home, which happens in a lot of companies and businesses. But this Philadelphia team is like, you know what? We're so talented. We're going to win despite of all this. And then in the offseason, we'll all go our separate ways. Because I can tell you right now, at the end of this offseason, there's going to be a lot of guys dispersing from this Philadelphia team. But the Eagles defense did a lot of great things also. And I got to give them a shout out for that. They did a lot of great things. And the defense, Vic Fangio's defense is solid. There's nothing you could say about that defense in Philly. It is absolutely solid. And you're going to need that defense and Saquon to beat the next game's winner that I'm about to talk about. Because Washington, they came in and they said, hey, you guys want a shootout? We'll give you one. And they did. I mean, Jaden Daniels, once again, stellar rookie year, coming off a Heisman Trophy win. 299 for 2 touchdowns, threw the ball 31 times. His completion percentage was phenomenal. Has not been sacked in the playoffs. Brian Robinson Jr. had 2 rushing touchdowns. He ran all over the place. And of course, McLaurin, his guy, got his 1 touchdown. That was a phenomenal touchdown he ran for. Then you look on the other side, Amon did his job. He got his 8 receptions, 137. Typical Amon. Jared Goff threw for 313. Jahmyr Gibbs did his thing, got his 105, 2 touchdowns. But then Jared Goff threw for 3 picks. Could have thrown the 4th and the 5th one if you watch that game. He just looked rattled after a few plays. And I'm telling you, Washington and Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator, we know he can coach defense when he's got the pieces, when he's got guys who believe in him. We saw it in Atlanta. Unfortunately, his offensive coordinator in Atlanta for that Super Bowl against New England didn't know what he was doing. But that's a whole different conversation. But he's got Cliff Kingsbury now, who's working very well with the young quarterback, the rookie quarterback. And we're seeing a trend of rookie quarterbacks performing well. C.J. Stroud, of course, the previous year had a good year. Now you see Jaden Daniels. Now, the question is there a precedent set now for rookie quarterbacks? I think it's unfair. I think this is just one of those seasons where Jaden Daniels came into the right situation, the right coaching staff. They got the player personnel, and they're just doing well. I don't expect another rookie quarterback to do this next year. Whether it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, I don't expect them to do that. But what's great about the NFL is that you come into a situation and you have that mindset to win. You're not coming into a game just to lose, just because you're a 5th seed or a 6th seed. You're coming to win the game. And Washington did what they were supposed to do. Shout out to Washington. Detroit, it's funny because Jared Goff had this game against Houston earlier on in the season. I think he threw 4 picks and they pulled it off. But this ain't Houston. Washington could score points. You've seen it all year. They could score points. And this is why I say Philadelphia, if that Philly defense has any leaks next Sunday, the Washington Commanders could be in the Super Bowl. Don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. They went to Tampa and told Baker, have a good summer. They went to Detroit and told Detroit, have a good summer. They could do the same thing in Philly. And what's even better about this game coming up Sunday, it's a division game. And that's where I'm going to segue now. So now I'm going to go to my predictions. So the first is the NFC Championship game, Washington, which I just mentioned, against Philly. I'm gonna go with Washington. Jalen Hurts has been absolutely pedestrian. This is a division game. This is what makes this even more special. It's not only an NFC Championship game, it's a division game. And I tell you, these division games are wide open. There are no definitive winners in division games. I've been talking about this all season long on this podcast. And I'm picking Washington to win 35-32. 35-32. I'm even going to put a score in. So that's what I'm going to say. Now, the AFC Championship game, this is something I've been waiting for. Can Josh Allen finally do this? Can he finally put his demons to rest? Can he finally do this? This is the opportunity. It's right there. A KC team that hasn't been that offensively potent all year, but they still play great football. They still find ways to win. You're going into KC. You're not in Buffalo. And it's a road game. Do you want that Lamar Hunt trophy, or are you just going to watch KC celebrate for, a 3rd straight year? So, I'm going to go with Buffalo. I'm going to put pressure on Buffalo. I'm picking Buffalo to win. It's time. This is it right here. This is it. So I'm picking Buffalo to win. So that's my predictions for the championship games in the AFC and NFC. But now I'm going to get to a couple more topics before I close this podcast. I want to talk about George Pickens because I've had some conversations with some peeps about this. We know how Coach Tomlin has been a big supporter and is always wrapping his arms around these guys, and people have talked about trading him. Is he going to be traded in the offseason? More than likely, he'll be traded. I jokingly said with a few brethrens, 7th round pick. Why I said that is because when you don't put the work in, your value drops. I think the most you're going to get for George Pickens is a 4th round pick because you don't know what George Pickens you're going to get. Again, same thing with the Chris Boyd situation earlier on. Young guys thinking that they got full autonomy to behave a certain way. It doesn't work like that, folks. I say if Pittsburgh is going to trade him, they're going to get a 4th round pick for him. Do they have to trade him right away? No. They might trade him at the draft. They might trade him after the March 1st. Who knows, depending on what the salary situation is. But like I said before, when you come into a league like the NFL and you have that attitude, it's hard to change those bad habits. So Pittsburgh is a team that's predicated on defense and just, running the ball and all that. They're going to be making some changes in the offseason. Now, what changes they make, that's up to them. But I'll say this right now. George Pickens, I've watched it all year and I've said it all year. I don't accept nor condone that type of behavior. These young guys have to understand they're not here forever. And if they don't be careful, they'll be out of the league. The NFL is about the logo. They don't care about the players. They're selling the brand. The brand is what sells, not the players. So now the national championship game. No, I didn't forget about that. It's happening tonight here. Today's MLK Day in the States. You got the 7th seed Notre Dame Fighting Irish against the 8th seed Ohio State Buckeyes. Mr. Day against Mr. Freeman. Two teams that have had some very up and down situations throughout the year, some games that they've lost. But what's a beauty, again, just like the NFL, I love this 12-team playoff situation because it gives a different dynamic. You're not guaranteed to see the top teams in the game, in the championship game. You're going to see whoever you want to see in the championship game. And I believe this is the game that's supposed to happen for many reasons. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to pick Ohio State because Notre Dame is not a high-scoring team. I think Ohio State's going to win this game. I think Ryan Day is going to get his national championship. And, but Freeman has a different way of doing things. So if he squeaks this out and wins one for Notre Dame, it's a possibility because the last time we saw them in the national championship against Alabama, we all knew, saw, and predicted what was going to happen. I think it's going to be a different outcome. So both these coaches have an opportunity to do something great. This 12-player format works. And to the teams that were bitching and complaining about not getting in the 12-team playoff, win the games you're supposed to win and book better schedules. I don't care. I don't care who's mad about it. You got to do better when it comes to playing games. You lose, for example, Hurricanes lose to Syracuse. They think they deserve. You shouldn't have lost to Syracuse, and you should have scheduled better. That's on you. You schedule teams, you win those games. That's it. Plain and simple. So, again, we got a national championship game tonight. We got 2 good championship games next Sunday. So football's not over yet, folks. So that's a wrap on my end. Once again, wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Peace, respect.